furnish you with a copy of it. Everyone is muted. If you have questions during this session, please put them in the group chat. I'll be monitoring that and forwarding the questions, and we will get to as many questions as possible. The way the evening will work is like this. For the first 10 minutes, we'll look at Zoom, at some of the ins and outs of Zoom and how it can best be used for a virtual Seder, and then spend the majority of our time on the steps of the Seder and ideas for creating an interactive Seder this year. So with no further ado, I want to introduce our director of jkidphilly, who is going to lead us through this webinar, Lisa Littman.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to see everyone today, even if you're only that tiny. And I would like to say already, kol hakavod, congratulations. You've made it this far, and at least that means you've made a choice to try to lead a virtual Seder and do something to celebrate this fantastic holiday of Passover. I know that's not easy, and I'm here to tell you that no matter what your Seder looks like, it's good. If you decide you just have to drink 4 cups of wine and tell a story, it's good. Just give yourself permission to take this opportunity to try something different and to be kind to yourself, however it turns out. Our goals today are, just as Phil started to say, how to take something that's usually so sensory, so tactile. We use all of our senses in a Passover Seder. So how do we take that and then kind of translate it onto a flat screen where we have 2 of our senses? We can see faces and we can hear, but we're not used to missing the smells and the tastes and the hugs. So that'll be a challenge. The second one is, how do we involve everybody together? How do we really encourage participation? And the third is, again, permission to adapt this to your needs. However it works out, you don't have to do it all. It would be challenging to do the entire Seder, everything, every word in the Haggadah. So try to find out what works for you and your family. And don't worry, all of our resources are going to be on jkidphilly.org. So, on with the show. Part 1, we're going to talk about all the technicalities of the kinds of things that you're going to need in order to prepare this Seder. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I want to do some of the more creative things. But first, let's talk about Zoom a little bit. I do recommend that you use the Zoom platform. It's easy. And just in trying to remember, there are 2 ways to look at it. You have the gallery view. Anybody here remember the Brady's? I know, like, we're dating ourselves if we say that. We do, but here we go. This is what we call the gallery view, and there's a little button at the top of your screen on the upper right-hand side of your screen, and that you can switch back and forth from this gallery view to speaker view. And that way you can see just one person. And if somebody is sharing their screen, like we are with you today, you have a choice of how much of that shared screen you want to see and how much of the person you want to see. If you run your mouse over the dividing line between these 2 areas, you're going to see 2 little lines. And if you drag those lines over, then you get to choose how much you see and how much you don't see. I think we've seen just enough of me in that. But now the question is, who am I inviting to this Seder? Is this your opportunity to invite someone that you haven't seen in ages? Is it an opportunity to say, I'm going to invite all of those 100 people I never get to have to my house? Or am I going to keep it intimate? And that's really something you need to decide based on how comfortable you are with the Zoom platform. It is going to take some planning. It's not as easy as you might think, and it can get very cacophonous, right? If everybody was on the phone at the same time right now, it echoes. There's a time lag. You can't always sing in unison. In fact, you really can't at all unless everyone's muted and one person is singing and you sing along with that person. I know that that can feel really weird at first, but you'll get over it. It'll be fine. And every once in a while, you might like to hear that strange cacophony. I know in our house, we always sing the 4 questions and people repeat, all the different, matzah, halayla hazeh, that kind of stuff. It's really fun. And sometimes you just want to hear that. In our house, we have a very special shehechiyanu that we sing. And even if it sounds a little disjointed, we're going to need to hear each other's voices. So you're going to have to decide when you're muting everyone and when people are going to come on. The next thing you have to do is pick a Haggadah. And there are so many Haggadahs out there. jkidphilly has one online, PJ Library has one, but there are so many Haggadahs. Here's what the PJ Library Haggadah looks like. I don't know if anybody, if you have it. It's really quite lovely. It's got lovely pictures in it. Ooh, as many do. And then these are one of my favorites from when my kids were little. Have you seen the Uh-Oh Haggadah? It's kind of like a Where's Waldo type of Haggadah, but there are so many. And again, you don't need to follow every word. And tonight, we're really not even going to focus on Haggadahs. We're going to talk more about the steps of the Seder and how each step can become something interesting and exciting.
And Lisa, if I can just jump in for a second.
Sure.
There are Haggadot online, like the PJ Library Haggadah, the jkidphilly Haggadah, which you can use from your phone or from your iPad or from your computer if you don't have a printer and want to print up all of the many copies of them.
That's such a great idea, Phil. You could have your iPad on one side of your computer and the computer too, or vice versa. That works out great. Thank you. You need to have some kind of a loose structure, and you really have to step forward and be the leader. That just has to happen. Every Seder needs a leader, and pretty much you're going to be it. But that doesn't mean that other people can't have a part, so you need to mail things out ahead of time and have people have whatever they need, a PDF, as Phil suggested. And again, you have to choose when to mute and unmute people. And if you are using Zoom, if you have a free account, you have a 40-minute time limit from the time that you start, and you will get booted off at some point. But maybe that's not such a terrible idea, thinking ahead about my Seder is going to take X amount of time. One of the big questions is, but what do I do about the meal? What do I do when it's time for Shulchan Orech, the festive meal? Do we stop it? Do we come back together? And what if somebody is sitting by themselves? These are questions that you have to answer, whether you're going to do everything before the actual meal, whether you're going to kind of sit together and hear each other eat and pass food around. And if you do that, you will need to get a subscription to Zoom. You get a free trial month, and then it's only $14.99 for sort of a basic, but then you could stay on as long as you want with up to 100 people. And don't have more than 100 people at your Seder. That would be really hard. Now, like any Seder, this is going to take some advanced planning. It's not that, wow, I'm not cooking, I don't do anything. For some of us, this might be the first time we're actually leading a Seder because we tend to go to somebody else's house and let somebody else do all the work. And that's good too. If this is your first time, I really recommend that you read some resources on how to run a Seder, or just read the introduction to your Haggadah. All of these resources, again, are available on jkidphilly.org, and we'll tell you how to get to them later. Okay, I think we are going to move on. Are there any questions so far?
No, we're good.
Great. Great. So here is all the things that I just talked about before. But now, okay, so part 2. Here's all the things for interaction that we really want to talk about. Thinking ahead. Assign parts. Everybody wants to have a part in the Seder, and if they don't, they should. So again, I said we were going to concentrate on the steps of the Seder today, and there are different ways to do this. You can either send out a bunch of numbers to your family and friends who's ever attending on your virtual Seder and say, okay, I want number 3. And then when number 3 comes up, whatever that is, that's what they're doing in the moment. Or in advance, people can say, no, I'm really interested in thinking about taking the Kiddush or the karpas, dipping the celery or parsley, whatever vegetable you dip. And the way that you interpret it can be any different kind of way. It can be an artistic rendering. It can be a science experiment. It can be a sculpture. It can be a dance or a video. Let your imagination run wild. And again, you don't have to do every step of the Seder. And that's part of what you do in advance. You really think about what is going to meet your needs. I know in my family, this may shock you if you've never seen, or even if you have seen my videos, we like to sing. So we do song parody all the time. And sometimes I will challenge everyone to write a new song this year that has to do with X, Y, or Z. So one of our family favorites is, is this the matzo ball I carried? That goes on. Or have I gotta drink wine, a lot of matzah, you gotta eat bitter herbs. Anyway, let's see what your family members can come up with, and that could be really fun. So the next thing you need to do in advance, and your participants need to do in advance, are gather some of the ritual objects. Have the Seder plate. Now, maybe not everybody has one, and that's okay. You could certainly print one online. You could draw one. And what if I can't get all the ingredients I need? What if I can't find a shank bone? What if I can't find the maror? Again, use your imagination. This is a tough time for a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, what is perfect? There's no such thing as perfection, and it's just the joy. Let's focus on the joy of what we want to do. So anything that you can gather, and make substitutes. That could be funny too. If I can't get a shank bone, what will you do? Vegetarians use a roasted beet or even a broiled mushroom. But what are some of the things that you could do? If you couldn't get a hard-boiled egg, what could you have in its place? Maybe you're even going to think about some brand new symbol that you would use instead. The whole idea behind the Seder plate is that we have the tastes and smells and feels of things that remind us of a story from long ago. It helps us tell the story. It helps the story come alive. So what are the things that you could have on your Seder plate that help this story come alive? There are people that put an orange on the Seder plate, for example, because we want to talk about women's rights. People put olives on the Seder plate as a prayer for peace. We just heard someone talk about putting an apple on the Seder plate because an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And they want to symbolize this continued good health and positive attitude and a proactive way of staying healthy. So what might you put on your Seder plate that symbolizes our past and symbolizes our modern experiences too? But really the idea for Passover is to focus on the story. And what way are you going to do the story? So speaking of stories, it might be a really fun way to tell the story through a script, act it out. We have scripts on jkidphilly.org. We have a 10-minute script that's a little more adult, and then there's one that's a little more child-friendly, but always read whatever you're going to do in advance if you have young children to make sure that it's appropriate for them or it's saying the things that you want to say. Maybe you want to have puppets. Maybe you're really good at doing puppets and you want to do that, or masks or hats or costumes or name tags, any way that you could find to act out the story and make it a really exciting thing. Again, if you're going to give out the script, if you're going to have people read that, that's something you will want to send to them ahead of time. So you're going to want to send a PDF of the script to all of your participants. Okay. Next, part 2, the Seder itself. So here's the Seder. This is a page from the PJ Library Seder, and it talks about the steps of the Seder. all the different parts of the Seder. So if that's difficult for you to see, we can also send you the parts of the Seder, and don't worry about that. But one of the ways that you can be interactive is, of course, participants can take turns. Participants can leave it up to themselves whether they're going to mute or unmute, or you can have control of that yourself if you're a good Zoomer. And by the way, when this is over and we're finished talking about all the fun and festive ideas, if you want to stay on the phone afterwards, the part that's not recorded, and you want to have a Zoom tutorial, I'm just happy to stay and talk to you about Zoom and some of the features that are on Zoom that you might want to use. So what are the visuals? What are the ways that we could be visual? I talk with my hands. I saw somebody else who was on screen yesterday who spoke about talking with her hands, and it's actually a great way to interact with people on your Zoom calls because it looks more natural than just seeing a disembodied head. So that's one way. And remember, that's part of this whole thing, that we need to see each other. So if we're all raising our glasses, let's all do it together. I'm going to have a sip of water. If we're washing our hands, maybe somebody's teaching us the best way to wash our hands, and we can do that together. So anything that you're doing, bring into the screen. And if you have people that are new to Zoom, it's okay in the middle of the Seder to say, wait, you know, I can't really see you. Can you tilt your screen up? Can you tilt it back? Can you get where the light is? Can you raise your screen? Can you lower your screen? Do you want to put your computer on a couple of books? Anything that will help us all feel close together. My family and I were together a week ago, and my niece and nephew have their Zoom on a television, which is great, but they were sitting on their sofa and we couldn't see them at all. And so don't feel shy about saying, come on over, come and join the crowd. When you're trying to keep all ages occupied, that can really be a challenge too. So when they're younger children at your Seder, depending on your observance level, you may want to have other things on the table, like small world play. I know I have little figurines that I like to give to children, or pipe cleaners. I always have pipe cleaners, or something to color. If that is your custom, we have great coloring pages on jkidphilly.org, and you want to have things around so that who's ever sitting at the table is occupied with everybody else. Another way to do that is, of course, to have musical instruments so that when you sing, I'm going to turn this off for now, so that when you sing, there's music in the background. But the other thing to do is to really think about what is important to you. What are the important steps of the Seder that really are meaningful to you? And if you thought right now, there are 3 steps of the Seder I just cannot possibly be without, what would they be? And really think about that and focus on those. So now what we'd really like to do is kind of talk through some of the steps of the Seder, and we'll give little bits of information and hints on all of them. And if you have any questions or any other suggestions, I would love to hear from you. You can write it in the chat, and Phil will be delighted to talk to us about it. And so what we also want to think about is not just all the fun things that we normally do at a Seder, but how we can make that translatable to what's happening on the screen at any given time. So we'll start with Kadesh. Kadesh, it comes from the word to make holy, but it's also a way to be separate. And unfortunately, many of us are separate, but how do we elevate this moment? How do we set the tone for the rest of our Seder so that we are experiencing something beautiful and spiritual together? We really want to create that atmosphere. And perhaps it's you as a leader or a guest that you've invited, if you have a parent, uncle, cousin, or somebody who wants to start and give a, you know, a deeper meaning to the day. That is a great thing. When we do the Kiddush and throughout our Seder, there are 4 cups of wine. And when we read the Haggadah, we hear that each cup of wine has a different attitude, a different flavor. It is for redemption. It is for our freedom. It's for something different. So you might challenge 4 different members of your family to come up with a way to make a toast, or think about a person who's not in your Seder, who would like to be in your Seder, somebody from your past, somebody that you admire, maybe somebody that you would like to invite to your Seder from the Torah or from across the world, or even an imaginary character. It could almost be like the ushpizin, the guests at your sukkah. We talk about inviting in our ancestors. So this is your opportunity to really set the tone. And when we make a toast, make it so that we can all see that we're doing this together. So now we have urchatz, washing our hands. Gosh, that's an important one these days. So again, wash your hands, you know. And when we say, why is this night different? On other Seders, we wash our hands with water. I know that in my family, that was always a big thing. I was always the one that had to carry around the pitcher, and my brother would wipe his hands in my sleeve. But now we're using soap and water, and we're really, really, really washing. So think of the ways that that's different. And also think about how even many years ago, it was an important thing to approach your table and the time together as a holy moment, as a spiritual moment. And so a ritual washing of hands was such an important thing for centuries of our people. And now we have karpas. Karpas are greens, and we usually dip a green vegetable, but this, but our blessing, the bracha that we say, is about things that grow from the earth. So here's a great opportunity to think about a future garden, perhaps, or science experiments, or ways that you can think about growth. You know that if you cut the top off a celery stalk and put a celery in water, it will start to grow very, very quickly. And if you did that today or tomorrow and at the bottom of a celery stalk in a cup of water, by the time the Seder comes around next week, there would already be little sprouts. And so we think about spring and we think about regrowth. We can even show pictures of, if we have children at the Seder, what they looked like last year and what they look like this year, and to appreciate how much they've grown over the past year. Or perhaps you want to share something that that you have accomplished over the course of the year and a way that you have grown as an adult. Now in our family, we're very big on dipping, right? So this is the first dip. We dip greens into salt water, which are a memory of things that aren't so great, but we like to dip all kinds of things. So in advance, you could share recipes and ask people what they're eating, what they're dipping into, what it makes them think of. Now we're going to move on to yachatz. And yachatz is breaking the middle matzah. And so we can break a piece of matzah, and usually we put one away to hide for the afikomen. So one thing that you can do in this time that would be very unusual is to hold your matzah very close to your camera and break it slowly. See if you can hear the break. And then you can compare which person got the most 50-50 split. I know it's almost impossible to split a piece of matzah in half, but that could be kind of a contest that you have in your family. Who split it? You know, on at the end of Shabbat every week during Havdalah, we say that the longer the sizzle, when you dip your Havdalah candle into the wine at the very end, the longer the sizzle, the better the week. We listen for that. And so this could be the same thing with the matzah. The longer you take to break and the bigger crackle, maybe we'll have a good year. So there are ways to experiment with that. Hiding the piece for the afikomen is a challenge, but don't worry. We have some ideas of ways that you will be able to still play the afikomen game. But let's move on to telling the story. This is my favorite part. I mean, I love to tell stories, and our family loves to act it out. And now we have our regulars. My brother, for example, is always the Pharaoh. He's got a fantastic evil laughter. So we're really looking forward to that this year. And I like to ask the questions. Also in our family, like I said, we do a lot of backup singing. We often use this, I don't know if anyone has ever seen this 300 ways of saying the 4 questions. This has everything from French, Italian to Klingon, and sometimes we just ask those questions. So what are the ways that you're going to ask questions, and what questions are you going to ask? You can also do Jewish Mad Libs, Passover Mad Libs. There's a link to that on our resource page. You can do a Jewish Jeopardy, Passover Jeopardy, and you can actually do that live on screen, or you can just have a series of questions to ask. You can do videos that you show. You can have character interviews. So if somebody's Moses, you can Moses, this is Lisa with the Pyramid News, and I'd like to know how you feel about your impending meeting with the Pharaoh. What would you say? How do you feel at this very moment? And challenge someone in your family to react as Moses might react. You can do that for all of the characters. I know that when we get to the plagues this year, it really has a new meaning for us, right? Many of us feel like we are experiencing a plague right now, and in many ways we are. Of course, depending on the age of your children, you may or may not share some of those feelings, but it's certainly on everyone's mind. That's why we're here tonight. What can we think about the plagues? In a recent conversation with the rabbi at my synagogue, Rabbi Eric Yanoff, he spoke about the fact that when it was time to paint the lintels of the doors, it wasn't the outside of the door so that the angel could pass over the homes. God knew where we lived, but it was really to paint the inside of the doors to warn us not to go outside, that something outside was happening, something frightening that would be dangerous to our health. So stay indoors. And we can certainly all relate to that this year. Well, all this talking about plague, and now it's time to wash our hands again. So again, we can do more washing. Somebody else could do washing. There have been funny songs that people can wash their hands to. You can challenge people to sing a song for 20 seconds while we all wash our hands. What Passover song would we sing for 20 seconds to wash our hands? Again, there's so many songs, and you can use a lot of the songs at this part of the Seder. I'll bet you know so many of them. And today online, I spoke about making all different kinds of instruments to go along with all of those songs. What are some of the instruments that you can make? In my home, we have just every instrument you can imagine. But today I made tambourines out of plastic lids from a can. And aluminum foil and pipe cleaners, and they actually make a great noise. And you can make a variety of shakers out of all different kinds of things. I know I have a lot of empty containers in the house, and you can experiment with the different kinds of things that are in those containers and make a guessing game for the people who are listening. So if I'm shaking something that has rice versus beans versus pennies or buttons or stones, it will have a different sound, and you can encourage your guests to guess what those sounds are. I know that someone has their hand raised. Phil, can you help me with that?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, if people would put any questions you have into the chat, we'll get to them during the session.
Sure. I'm sorry. I don't seem to have the chat option here. I actually looked for that, but I can ask at the end. That's not a problem.
Okay. Check on the bottom of your screen, and there should be a bubble that looks like a thought bubble. That's the chat bubble.
It doesn't seem to be on mine, maybe because it's on my phone, but it's not a problem at all. I was just going to ask if it was going to be recorded for later. That's all.
It is going to be recorded.
It'll be sent down.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Sure, of course. Okay, so now we're up to motzi matzah and having that delicious matzah that we've waited all year. I know there are plenty of people out there that just love the taste of matzah. I can't admit to being one of those, but here we go. And then we spoke about a very, so we have our matzah, and then we have our maror, our bitter herb. And again, the use of horseradish is a very Eastern European thing. Sephardim tend to have lettuce. And I know when you look at pictures of a Seder plate, you will often see a big piece of lettuce. So what tastes bitter to you? And if you can't find horseradish, what would you use for bitter? Maybe you can do a comparison with different people at different parts of your Seder. Just challenge everybody to bring something bitter and have everybody show what that is. It could be like a matching game. I have radicchio. Oh, I have radicchio too. We match. Or whatever it is. And what are the taste comparisons? What is the difference between bitter and sour and salty and sweet? How does that, and spicy, right? Horseradish is very spicy. So what is the purpose of that? If it's to remember a bitter time, how does that help us do that? And we know that there are many foods, many smells, many tastes that bring us back to another time and place. I know, for example, there's a particular cologne that my dad wore, and whenever I smell that, I feel like I'm near my father. There are tastes and foods that we associate with different people too. So this is a great time to think about what some of the tastes are that help us remember other people and other places and other times. The next part of the Seder is korech, making this combination. And it's this Hillel sandwich, right? We talk about running, about taking food in a hurry, but also the combination of bitter and sweet. And that even though our lives were bitter and we had to leave our homes and it was very uncertain what our future would bring, there was sweetness. There was sweetness in being together. And it's a great time for us to think about what are the things, even in this difficult time, that's making life bearable, that's making life sweet. Connecting with one another is such an important thing. I've been meeting with people that truthfully I don't necessarily meet with all year long because I feel, well, I can't go see them. But now because of my computer, I do have that opportunity. And that's been a movement of sweetness. So people can share what's been pleasant, what's been positive. We know there are challenges, we know that. But Passover is such a story of redemption and hope for the future that it would be great to just spend the evening focused on that, focus of where we're going when we get out of Mitzrayim, the narrow place that comes from the word Mitzrayim, comes from the word for narrow places. So we're coming out of a place where we're squeezed, and where are we going? And how beautiful to focus on that. So here's the part we were talking about. How are we going to find the afikomen? So again, I've sort of I've skipped over this part about the meal. And again, that will be your choice depending on how many people are here. Certainly in my family, when my daughter did a year abroad in college, we put a computer at every big family gathering. And it felt like she was there, but that's one person in a room full of other people. It can be a challenge to have, 8, 10 computers and trying to dine together, but maybe that's just part of the fun. Maybe we want to do that anyway. So you can think about how you're going to do that, or you're going to have something that's short and sweet and you say goodnight and eat, or maybe meet up after the meal for some raucous singing. Okay, so now the meal is ended and we're going to try to find the afikomen, and what do we do about that? So there are a couple ways that I thought of that you can do that. You can hide a phone. This is also my Rabbi Eric Yanoff's idea. You can hide a phone that's been on Zoom without a picture somewhere. Now the other people will have to know your home well enough. So for example, my family pretty much knows every area of my home because this is usually where we host large family gatherings. So I could hide a phone somewhere in my house, and right before people are trying to use the, trying to find the afikomen, we could click on the picture so that the rest of the people see a spot in the house. Now, I wouldn't necessarily show an entire room. I would give it a little bit of a challenge, again, depending on the ages of the people who are attending your Seder, but then they can try to guess where that phone is hidden in your home. Another thing would be to have a scavenger hunt. Again, it could be in your home or a place that everybody knows. If the first week in September, everybody always goes to the same shore house, maybe you're going to imagine a place in that home. Or it could be anywhere in the world, or it could be anywhere in my greatest fantasy. Maybe it's I'm hiding a piece of afikomen in Rapunzel's tower. And people have to, I could either give clues, we could do it that way with like little poems. I love to write, couplets, little 2 lines that rhyme together. Maybe I would very slowly give away hints to that. Or people could ask 20 questions. Is it a real place? Is it a fake place? Is it in literature? Is it in a movie? And so you could hide this piece of afikomen absolutely anywhere in the world. And somebody can ultimately find it. Now, what you give away as gifts for finding it, that's completely up to you. So whether you want to have some kind of contest, and by the way, Jewish Learning Venture is having a contest right now for all JKid families, and it's about how you're making this holiday different. You can find information on that at jewishlearningventure.org, and that'll be a ton of fun. And I got to that because there really is a prize for that. We're giving away an Amazon gift card. So you may choose to do that. You may choose to give everyone gifts.
Lisa?
Yes.
One question that came up from one of our viewers who is 7 years old is, why do we even search for the afikomen?
Wow, that is a really good question. Phil, I'm passing that one right back to you.
We search for the afikomen because the rabbis wanted to keep the meal interesting and wanted to extend the time that we're together. So by hiding something, it gave children a way to stay focused during the meal, so they wouldn't, so they would wait till the very end. And the taste of the afikomen is the taste of redemption. So we wanted to keep that last bit of redemption till the very, very end and keep children involved. So good question, Noah.
Really good question. And thanks for asking it. Phil, thank you very much. I know in our house, my grandmother always kept a piece of the afikomen all during the year. She kept it with her Passover things until the following year to help bring good luck and maybe a piece of redemption to us for the entire year. So
afikomen means dessert. Everything you eat.
And I'm sure it's better than all the chocolate torts that everyone is making. Well, that was a great question. Thank you. So let's see. We're almost at the end of all of our steps. We have Barech, which is the blessing after the meal. And again, if you're not having the meal together, how are you incorporating blessings? And the next one, which is Hillel, which is really praising God. And it's a great time to stop and say, what are we thankful for? And what is deserving of praise? And these are things that we can share via computer, and to really have that time to think about it and share with our family members how much we appreciate them, what we appreciate about each other. And those of us who are able to attend any kind of Seder, that we're grateful for that. So to really think about that. Of course, there are fantastic songs you can sing too. I never want to ignore those, but just to really think about how much we really do have to be thankful for. And the very last part of this Seder is our conclusion and our songs. We often sing Haggadah, and that is a fantastic song. And it really talks about consequences One thing leads to another, that kind of thing. In our house, everybody volunteers to make a particular sound effect, and we could certainly do that in this kind of setting where people, make the sound of the goat and the sheep and the fire and the stick and the cow and all of those things. You can do that. And now this year, I haven't quite figured out how we're doing the next song. My brother and I love to sing some of the songs like Kilo Na we like to sing, and Ah Dear Who, but we sing it faster and faster and faster, and we have a contest to see who can sing it the fastest. And that will be hard to do with the lag time on Zoom, but I'm determined to figure that out. And then we say at the end of the Seder, at the conclusion of our Seder, and after we've had these songs, the traditional closing is next year in Jerusalem. And I know for many of us, we're thinking to end the Seder with next year in person, next year together, next year with hugs and kisses, and to really be able to be in person and have all those side conversations and do all the things we love to do so much. But really to think about what's coming in the future, and gives us an opportunity to do that. So I would love to turn it over to some of you to ask some specific questions. I know that we really spoke about a lot today, and just as a recap, we talked about the fact that whatever you do, whatever you decide to focus on, and the amount of time you have is great. Don't try to do everything all at once. It's okay if there are mistakes. You can always test out the Zoom platform ahead of time or the day before so that you really know how to use it. Again, I'm happy to stay and talk to anybody who wants a little bit of help with Zoom.
We have a couple of questions. The first question is, any advice on how to do the 10 plagues?
That's a great question, and I purposely avoided that, but I will say something. It's really fun to do act them out. We used to really go to town on this when my kids were little. We had theatrical blood that we would pour in the water and pretend to be pouring a glass of water, and there would be that, and we had frogs all over the table and beasts. We gave out stickers for boils. We threw marshmallows at each other for the hail. When we tell the story and we talk about the slaves, we have scallions and we hit each other with scallions. I'm sure we'll continue to do that. We had different things for the Grim Reaper. And, coming at it from a new perspective from where I am now, some of it is pretty grim. And there has been a lot of discussion over the past couple of years about not really glorifying the plagues and making them something to laugh at and have fun with, because quite frankly, now that we're living through one, it's not really that funny. So, that has to be with your sensibility. Are you as a family, and remember, this is about you and your Seder. So if your family is comfortable acting all of these things out and being funny and silly with it, great. If your family is not comfortable with it, then we continue with that tradition of taking a drop of sweetness out of our wine or juice glass as each plague happens, so that we can really think about the fact that other people are suffering. And maybe this is an opportunity for us to think about, instead of sort of that taking away, what can we contribute to people out there who are suffering in real time? Can we donate to food banks? Can we sew masks or gowns or protective gear? Is that something that we're capable of doing? What are the things that we can do to give back to a community that really is suffering from plagues at this time?
Some suggestions: throw cotton balls at the computer was one suggestion, or bring your animal and show your dogs and cats on the screen during the plagues.
Yes.
Turn off your video for darkness. Someone else asked about Elijah's cup. How you might do Elijah's cup in a virtual way.
Wow, that's another great question. So we were just participating in a Seder, a virtual how-to, and somebody recommended, again, adding to Elijah's cup from everyone's cup, and to also like share a memory about somebody at that time, and put that into the cup. Of course, when my kids were little, now if there are any little kids here, don't listen to this, okay? But when my kids were little, I would get a hyper absorbent piece of sponge, and I would pour the juice in, and it would lie very flat on the bottom. And because the juice was so dark, it would get soaked up into the sponge, and it would look like Elijah was drinking it. And maybe he was, and just maybe he was.
It's also, all these are opportunities for each person at your Seder to do something small in their own home. So everyone might have a cup and pour something, whatever they're drinking, into the cup. So together we're filling a cup of hope, and we're filling a cup of redemption. Someone asked about using a Zoom poll. Yes, if you have a professional level account with Zoom, which means you're paying for it, you can put a question up and have people and take a poll among your guests. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen. I would recommend trying it out first, so you're sure what you're doing with it.
And of course, it would be so much fun to have decorations behind you. I've been working on a large mural. I did that with my children when we were growing up. I've been working on it on my Facebook Live every morning at 10 a.m. And so we have pyramids, and we have Moses in the basket, and I've just finished making Moshe's sheep because he was a shepherd. This is a sensory kind of thing. So, but I'll have that in the background during our Seder, and anything you can have. And we have a lot of sheets, like I said, and placemats and things that you can decorate. You can take cloth, like those Indian bedspreads. That's what I use for the walls of my sukkah. But you can take cloths and drape them around so it looks like you're sitting in a tent. Maybe the other people won't be, but anything that you could do to make your background interesting and unusual so that people imagine they're in a different place would be a really fun idea to do.
I would go back for a second, since we have a few minutes, to the 4 questions. The answer this year to why is this night different than all other nights, I think we can come up with a lot of answers. I think it's an opportunity not only to look at the ways that we're separated, but maybe use that first question and a family conversation about, even given our separation, our physical separation, and what's going on, what we're grateful for. What about this night is different in a way that brings us opportunities that we haven't had before? What makes us hopeful? What makes us grateful now? I also want to say, when you prepare your Seders this year, people will have all kinds of feelings about them. There will be, for many, a feeling of loss at what you don't have. Be gentle with yourselves. This is going to be a different and possibly a difficult year. If you don't have what you always have for Pesach, it's okay. Use something else. If you don't have anything, as Lisa said in the beginning, if you don't have a zroa, if you don't have a shank bone, make a picture of one. Write the word shank bone. If you don't have a plate, if you don't have a Seder plate, copy one. Use what you have around. It is a year that is going to really call on us to be, in some ways, more creative than we've ever been at our Seders, so that we can really enjoy them, so we can celebrate, and so we can really feel, despite our distance, that we're all together.
Yeah, I'd love to add to that, Phil. I think that's so important. And I know that when I was first taking over the Seder from my parents and from my grandparents, there's part of us that wants to say, but we've always done it this exact way. But here is your opportunity to do it in a new way, to put some of yourself into it and what works for you, and not to worry about, oh no, but my great grandfather and we always did it like this, and well, this year is different. And like Bill says, take this opportunity to try something If you don't like it, okay, but maybe you're going to create a new family tradition. Some of these things that we've heard about the plagues and throwing things and the cotton balls or the marshmallows or whatever that we've done in the past, they're all great, and continue to build on that. And what might you do differently this year that you want to continue? How can you share new recipes and new ideas and really involve all of your guests? And remember that this is the area you get to do it in. Just whatever is on that screen in front of you.
Someone mentioned that in Zoom, next to your stop video, next to your video camera, there's an option for changing your background. So if you want to be creative and do a little playing, you could put pyramids behind your table.
Yes, you can choose a virtual background here. I'll do this for now. Ooh, or I can be in outer space. And I will tell you that my father always told us that he really was from outer space. And when we were growing up, anytime there were flashing lights in the sky, he would say, "My people are coming." Okay, just an aside. But like Phil said, you can download any pictures and put it into this and yeah, have whatever virtual background you want. That's great. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Does anybody want to share any of their favorite, some of their favorite traditions from their Seders or some of their favorite songs? Can I answer any questions about the actual use of Zoom? I think we have some real Zoom mavens on with us tonight.
Someone mentioned using Kahoot, K-A-H-O-O-T, as a way to play an online game during your Seder. You can go to kahoot.com, and it's a very easy program to use. And yes, the answer is this video will be sent out to everyone who has been on this video, who registered. Everyone who registered will get access to this video.
Great. Well, I was so afraid of like just like overloading everyone with ideas. I'm happy to continue to brainstorm, but if we don't have a particular question.
One other issue that just came up, how do you add slides to Zoom? You'll find on Zoom something that says share screen. Whatever slide you have, you can share using share screen, and everyone will see it. Someone suggested that might be an interesting way for everyone to have the same Haggadah. If you have the PDF of Haggadah, one person could put it up, and everyone can look at it.
I think that's a great idea. It depends on the size of your screen. I know if you're looking on the phone, so one of our participants even said this evening she was on the phone, the print can be very, very tiny. And so it could be difficult to read, but you're right, it will save people from having to download something separately. Then again, you need to make the choice back and forth, just like this evening. Sometimes you want to see people. And if you have your share screen up, I'm going to put this up right now because this is just where our website is. But you can see that if you're doing an entire Seder with this large screen and things written on it, then you're only going to see your family as teeny weeny little squares. And so you really want to balance that, just like you want to balance the sound and the cacophony of Zoom. You also want to balance how much we see people versus how much we see a screen, right? Because think about when you're watching television or a movie, we are so used to things changing rapidly, right? We're not used to looking at one thing for a long period of time. That's why when you're planning a Seder online, it really needs to be shorter than you would normally do. You don't have a side conversation. You don't have somebody going off on a tangent. Well, you might, but just to like sit like this is very difficult for us as human beings. So
you might want to, as was suggested on another webinar that Lisa and I attended yesterday, you might want to check out before where you put your computer on the table so people can see you. You know, the way television families always sit on only one side of the table. You might want to work that out. You should also know that Zoom has a maximum of 25 windows on a page. So you can have up to 25 different screens and see people on that Brady Bunch screen.
So I liked Eileen's comment about only 9 chairs, and we could change it to only 9 squares. That's really funny. That's one of my favorite Passover books. So that is a challenge. That is a challenge. And if you're watching on a phone or an iPad, you have even less space. I know that I've been listening to my daughter. My daughter, like I said, sings at a synagogue, and every Friday evening at 6 p.m. they have a kind of l'chaim to Shabbat, and they sing some songs together for 18 minutes. It's really quite beautiful. But when I'm on the phone, I can't see the other people in the congregation that have joined in. I can just see my daughter, and that's fine, and some of the lyrics.
Well, I want to thank everyone who came to join us tonight for our virtual Seder webinar. As we said before, we'll send out a link to everyone who registered so that you can go through and see it again. As Lisa said, if you go to jkidphilly.org, under resources, you will find lots of Passover resources, including a very easily downloaded Haggadah. So thank you. We wish you all a Chag Sameach, a very happy, meaningful, healthy Seder.
And before we go, thank you, Phil. I will let you close us out in a moment, but is there anyone who would like to stay on and just talk about how Zoom works? Is there anybody who wants an extra? So I'm happy to stay on after we officially end. Great. So we can do that. So Phil, at any time, if I think I can stay on without you, or obviously you can stay too, but I'm going to move into Zoom mode. And I don't think we need to record that.